You are now tuning in to the Going North podcast with your host, best-selling author, professional speaker, and member of the John Maxwell team, Dominic Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, we're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their gifts, stories, and expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, where we bring you some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different. Heck, today is a special day. Today is a special day indeed, because we got one heck of a guest for you today, my friends, because his name starts with the J, and we all know that J is one of the best letters in the alphabet. Is this guy right here. He teaches, he coaches, and he writes and speaks to mid and large size organizations struggling with their digital transformation and increasing their agility and integrating good product management and user experience practices into their ways of working. My goodness. Multiple time authors, including a best-selling author, and his work centers around transformation. And he's all the way from Barcelona, Spain. So let's give it up for Mr. JG himself, Mr. Jeff Gothelf. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I am doing fantastic, Dom. That may have been the best introduction ever. Thank you so much.
Woohoo! All right, good. That's usually one of the better parts of the show before I start making tree references.
I look forward to the tree references.
Yeah, we even got a banana reference before the recording started officially.
That's right. I liked it.
Well, as with all introductions, there's always stuff I forget, and it makes it look like a mouth with a bunch of cavities. So mind filling in some cavities I missed and tell us who is the one and only Jeff?
Sure, absolutely. It's been an interesting journey. I had aspirations at rock stardom when I was a kid and in college and beyond. I played piano in a bunch of bands and toured the East Coast relentlessly for a bunch of years. And, never made it, as these things these stories sort of end up in most cases. Never really made it and was tired of being broke. So I took to the internet in the late 90s. I always had an affinity for computers, and I ended up developing a career for myself as a software designer, as a web designer, app designer, that type of thing. And I did that for about a decade. And 10 years into my career, I found myself back in New York City, where I grew up, not far. I grew up in New Jersey. And I found myself back in New York with a team of designers who were struggling to do good design work in the ever-changing world of software development. And with the help of that team and some other folks from beyond the organization, we figured out a way to really help software design come of age, you can say, with the kind of the modern style of software development. And in doing so, I was fortunate enough to be offered a book deal. And I wrote a book. My first book was a technical book written by designers for designers, software designers. And the book is called Lean UX. And that book was a practical, tactical book that solved a problem for designers at the time. And what's amazing is that book changed my life. I ended up doing less and less design work and finding myself being asked to do a lot more teaching, speaking, coaching, consulting on the subjects on the topics that was in the book itself. And it turned out that I enjoyed doing that, and I ended up transitioning into that more and more and more. And then over the subsequent 10 or 12 years, I have built up a consulting and coaching career based on the ideas that I've learned doing that kind of consulting as it was. And so I've written several books since then, and I continue to work with organizations to help them build great digital products and services. I work with executives now to help them build cultures that support collaboration and customer centricity. And then most recently, I'm starting to apply all the learnings that I've had from design thinking and product thinking and all of these ways of building software products to approaching one's career and professional development as a product and continuously improving it and making it better. And that's the subject of my most recent book, which is called Forever Employable.
Woohoo! That's what I'm talking about. Continuous improvement. Love hearing that one. Love hearing that one. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And it's great that you're able to make that transition into something that you love doing, because that's something that I feel like a lot of people aren't able to do. Well, I wouldn't say aren't able to do, it's just that they put themselves in positions where they mentally feel that they're unable to do it, but you're able to make that transition.
I had no idea that I wanted to move into this kind of practice. I had no idea that I wanted to write a book. I was doing things by the book, the way that I'd seen others do it, the way that my parents told me it had to be done, the way that, you sort of, you go to school, you get a job, you work hard, you get a promotion, you get a lateral promotion, you make a little bit more money, maybe you manage somebody, you kind of, incrementally, slowly inch your way upwards. Maybe you move to a new company and get a little bit of promotion, that type of thing. That's the path that I was following. I had no intention of doing any of this other stuff. I just happened to find myself at a confluence of events. There were two events that really kind of set me off down this path. One was the fact that I turned 35. And I turned 35 and I was concerned, and concerned is a mild word, I was panicked that in 5 years I would be old and unemployable and overpriced and unemployable. Like I was concerned that when I turned 40, I would be too expensive. I wouldn't have the skill sets to work. And I knew this because I knew what I was making and I knew what I was paying the designers that I was hiring for my teams. And I was terrified about that. And I found myself at the same time leading my team through this transformational change for the way that design was supposed to work. And so I had this opportunity to build a platform around this subject matter. And in doing so, I created a foundation that enabled me to move away from that traditional way of working and corporate ladder climbing and more into this content creation, coaching, consulting, writing kind of style of lifestyle and work. And it turned out that I actually really, really enjoyed it, but I never imagined it. In fact, I have to tell you, I ran into, there's a guy named Gibson Biddle. Gibson Biddle used to be the VP of product at Netflix a while back. And he's a pretty well-known guy, and he's doing a lot of the same stuff that I'm doing these days. I ran into him back in January recently, and first time I'd ever met him, and we were chatting about some stuff. And he said to me, what do you like best about what you do? And I didn't really think about it for a second. And I said, you know what I like best? I said, I like teaching. And it's the first time I'd really ever said those words out loud and admitted to myself out loud that I'm a teacher these days. That's what I do. I teach people how to work better, more successfully, how to be more successful. And I really enjoy that. I genuinely enjoy that aspect of it. And again, if you had asked me 20 years ago when I started my career, if I wanted to be a teacher, the answer would have been hell no. I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a designer. I want to be a software guy. I want to be a rock star, whatever, right? But teacher? That doesn't sound like me. Turns out it's me. Who knew?
That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about. Heck, that might even lead to like a title of a biography down the road for you, from aspiring rock star to rock star teacher.
It's super interesting, right? So I play piano, and as a piano player, I was the side man in all of the bands that I was in. And so I was never front and center. I wasn't the singer. I wasn't the guitarist. I was always on the side, trying to be energetic and participate, but I was the side man. So I've been on stage a lot throughout my life, but never in front. And the interesting thing is that as a public speaker these days, and as an author, I spend just as much time on stage. I spend all of that time on stage by myself primarily. And the stages that I'm on these days are way, way bigger than they were when I was a musician. It's really interesting. Like we always tried the venues for the events that I speak at today are the venues that we would have killed to play at when I was a musician, right? It's super crazy for me to, like, I'll give you an example. Like, there's a big event that happens every year in London called Mind the Product. It's a product management event, and I've spoken at it a couple of times. And it's a big event. About a couple thousand people come, and they hold it at the Barbican. Now, the Barbican is a legendary venue. I mean, anybody has played the Barbican, and the stage, you can feel the essence of all these amazing performers and musicians and acts that have played there. And, the idea of getting up on that stage by myself in front of a couple thousand people and giving a talk is it's profoundly meaningful to me, not from an ego perspective, but just from, like, we tried so hard as musicians to get there. We never did. And now I'm there. So the rock star thing kind of came true, but I had to do it on my own without the band, I guess.
That's right. Now my man's the one-man rock band, baby. That's right.
Yeah.
But yes, indeed, congratulations, congratulations. Living the dream, and heck, even living the dream in a different way that you never expect. So, with being able to really now know that you enjoy teaching and being able to lead teams, what's probably been one of the most, I, I guess, I don't know why wisdom gleaning came to me. I guess the lack of a better word, but
Yeah.
I guess what's probably been one of the most powerful moments you've gained from teaching others, because when you teach, you get to learn things twice. So what's probably been one of those moments where you may have had a moment where you saw somebody really get it, and then they came back and told you that, you know what, thanks for telling me about that, Jeff. Thanks for explaining it in this way. I finally got it.
It happens regularly. In fact, to me, this is the most satisfying part of the whole thing. There are folks out there who are struggling with specific things at work, specific challenges, and there are things that I can help them with that make them more successful at work, that make their teams more successful, and that make their organizations and their customers more successful. And whenever I hear back from folks, in fact, I had an individual reach out to me asking me a question about an article that I'd written within the last year. And he said, do I have my thinking correct about this? And I said, well, yes, on this part, no, on that part. And I kind of gave him a sense of what I was meaning when I wrote the article. And then he came back and he said, thank you. He said, listen, your first book, Lean UX, really transformative for me, kind of changed my career approach and moved me in a particular direction. And I'm grateful for that. And to me, there's no better validation of what I do. There's no better feeling than knowing that I helped somebody out. And I always try to pay that forward. There's a book that I read back in 1999, tech book called Information Architecture for the World Wide Web. It was a nerdy book, but for me, it was a life-changing book because it set me off in a direction towards web design. And over the years, I've sought out and met the authors of that book and told them, I said, listen, your book changed my life. I do what I do today because of you, because I wanted them to know that. I wanted them to know that what they did had that kind of impact on me. And, to hear that about my work is the most humbling thing that I could hear. It's amazing and humbling. And it feels great to know that I've helped somebody.
Oh, yes, indeed. One of the best feelings ever. And that kind of really is the power of just really writing, because I think it was the Benjamin Franklin said that writing leads to wealth, and it's not just the wealth in your bank account, but the wealth of feeling good that you actually help somebody. Because if you write a book and then 10 years down the road someone reads it, and then someone's brave enough to actually reach out to you as the author, you reach out to the author, then that even makes the author feel even better that they actually did something that helped change someone's life for the better.
Absolutely. I mean, it's truly its own reward.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question you wish you be asked more often on these podcasts?
That's a good question. It's interesting. The conversation that I'm having now with this new book, Forever Employable, is the most personal conversation that I've ever had. It's the most personal story I've ever told. It's by far the most meaningful story, I think, and the most impactful. And initially I was very afraid of doing that. If you read my writing, if you read my business books and my tech books, there's nothing particularly personal in there. You might pick up that I'm married and have a couple of kids, but I don't really talk about that. And in this book, I talk about that kind of stuff a lot. I talk about my fears and my concerns, and I think it'd be really interesting to have those kinds of conversations. I was very worried about initially being that vulnerable in public. I didn't think people would care, and I didn't think people would want to hear that from me. And what I've learned over the last few months is I've started this conversation is that people can't get enough of that stuff. The kinds of conversations that people really want to dive into are the personal ones, the ones where you talk about the things that scare you, the challenges that you've overcome, how did you get from point A to point B, that type of thing. That is super meaningful. And so those are the kinds of questions that I'd love to get asked today that I have to admit I would not have loved to have been asked, I don't know, a year or two ago.
I got you. And that shows self-awareness, and it shows a level of growth too, because I mean, the title alone, forever employable. I mean, entrepreneurship, that's not for everybody. And folks need to start realizing that, because it's become more of like the in thing to do, because everybody wants to be an entrepreneur and be their own boss, when they have to realize, hey, it could be more difficult on paper than you think, and being able to have the next job find you, which is amazing. It's kind of like you're turning yourself into a magnet, basically.
That's exactly it. And that's exactly the mindset that you have to take, because you're turning yourself into an opportunity magnet. And it's a completely opposite way of thinking than what we've been told, right? So that the career path that I described before, right? Go to school, get a degree, get an entry level job, work your way up, right? That's the path that we've been told to follow, right? That is that's a push model, right? That you're pushing yourself out into the world, and you're pushing yourself into opportunities. You apply for a job and you're pushing yourself into that. And when you turn yourself into an opportunity magnet, you're creating a pull situation where you're pulling opportunities towards you, right? So the work that you're doing, the activities that you're taking part in, attract those opportunities to you. And it's literally 180 degrees different than the traditional process. And it's far more empowering, because you are far more in control, as opposed to you sort of hoping that things will work out when you push yourself out there. By creating this platform for yourself, by becoming the expert, the recognized expert, the thought leader in a particular space, you are pulling those opportunities like a magnet. I love that metaphor, towards you, in a way that then allows you to choose what's the best next thing for you, rather than being told, well, we'll take you for this gig and they won't take you for that gig, right? So it provides you with options and choices and a safety net and a future proofing and a pandemic proofing and a recession proofing way of approaching employability that I believe is tremendously valuable, both obviously from an employment standpoint, but also from a stress standpoint, from a kind of a mental and physical health standpoint. It reduces stress to know that you've got these opportunities kind of continuously coming in.
Oh yeah, you could say that again, because that's when you're operating at your best with not a lot of stress on you. Because I mean, it's like when you have opportunities flowing to you like that, when you get to that state, then you really don't have too much to worry about from the career aspect in terms of finding gigs or finding that job. So what's probably been the main thing that has helped you to become that opportunity magnet?
So like Benjamin Franklin, I'm not comparing myself to Benjamin Franklin, but you mentioned it earlier, right? Like I believe what he said, what you said about him, right? Which is writing, communicating. Writing to me is what did it. And I have to tell you, again, I never saw myself as a writer. I didn't approach things initially as a writer, as a communicator, and I was pretty crappy at it. I really was not a good writer when I started out. But it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you exercise, and that muscle grows stronger and it gets better. And when you get better, it motivates you to do it more and more and more. You know, when I set out to write the first book, I got that book deal, and they wanted 50,000 words. 50,000 words. The longest thing I'd ever written at that point was 500 words. Right? 500. Like, the idea of writing 50,000 words to me was the equivalent of climbing Mount Everest. Like, never going to happen. Right? Just not going to do it. But you know what? You break down the tasks, you break down the effort, you step by step by step, right? You do 50 words, then 150, then 500, then 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. You knock it down and you get it done, right? Now, that ultimately gets published, which is amazing. You learn how to write a book. Now, the fascinating thing is, right? So the first version of Lean UX gets published in March of 2013. In 2016, the publisher asked us to go back and write a second edition. And so we had to go back, and I had to read what we published in 2013 for the first time in a while. That's 3 years later. I've been writing for 3 more years. I was mortified
Yep.
by what they published. I could not believe they published this first version of this book, because my writing had gotten so much better simply by doing it, right? And so this time around, when they said, look, we want another 50,000 words, no problem. And I can give you 50,000 better words this time. You know, and when Sense and Respond came around again, it was 50,000, 60,000 words, right? Even better this time. Every single time it gets better. It gets better because I'm exercising that muscle. And for me, that's the key. So you've got to figure out your preferred communication channel or medium, whether it's writing or speaking or videos or podcasts or visualizations or whatever it is, right? And then get good at that communication. Just keep practicing it, because to me, that's how you tell your story, and that's how you build that following, is by building that compelling story and the compelling storytelling ability.
Oh yeah, that's right, my man. Dropping them gems, baby. That's right, them gems. Yes, indeed. Filling up that necklace of wisdom right there of confidence
Mm-hmm.
building. That's right. That's right. No pun intended, though.
Absolutely.
Oh man, oh man. But yes, indeed, it's great that you gain more confidence over the years and are able to republish books and have this even new book, Forever Employable. And the beautiful thing is going to be in audio too. And you're reading it yourself, right?
No.
Oh,
I didn't
darn it.
I didn't I didn't do it. Listen, here's how I think about it, right? I could do it. Right? And in this case, I probably should have considered it a bit more seriously, because it is a bit more personal. But you know what? There is such a vast set of options for getting good narrators, people who do this for a living. They've got the studio, they've got the workflow, they've got the tools. The guy that I hired was amazing. He was amazing. He sounds great. He made almost no mistakes reading the book. He knocked it out in a week. And the quality is top notch. It's way better than I could ever have done. And so it's worth it to me to pay him to do that than to spend the time figuring all that stuff out on my own. Also, the cost really wasn't that bad. I mean, I did it with Audible, and there's a marketplace, but you can pay those guys, those folks, in two different ways, right? You can pay them with either points on the book, so they get a percentage of every copy that sells, or you can pay them a flat rate, and that flat rate is an hourly rate per finished hour of audio. So if your book is 3 hours long and they charge you $200 an hour, you pay $600. To me, that's well worth it, given how much time I would spend to get it right. And so the guy just knocked it out, and it's done, and it's perfect. And so no complaints there at all.
I guess that's the Other magic of being forever employable. You get to help others stay employed too.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. That delegation magic, baby. That's right. The real DM that people need to talk about. The delegation magic.
It's I have, so I'm looking at it right now because I'm sitting at my desk in my office. There's a post-it note that hangs on my wall. It's been here for at least 2 years. It's probably close to 3 years. It's been sitting here on my wall, and it reads, "Outsource the work you hate. It shows."
uh.
You know, here's the interesting thing about that, right? A client told me that, right? I didn't come up with those words myself. I had a client who, after our engagement, proactively reached out to me. She said, "Look, I've got some advice for you if you want to hear it." And I said, "Sure." And this was one of the things she said to me. She said, I noticed which parts of our interaction you clearly hated and which parts you were clearly passionate about. She said, everything that you hate, outsource because it shows, comes across, right? And to me, I can't think of better advice these days, because people can tell when you hate doing something, right? Like I don't like doing sales, for example. I have to do it. I'm a business of one, but I have to do it. And so it comes across in conversations and in emails. You can sense my impatience or my desire to not really have this conversation, because I don't like the whole negotiation back and forth. I just don't care for that part of the process. It's just my personality doesn't jive with it. So if there's look, I don't outsource my sales work just yet, but if there are things that you can outsource, particularly things that people are better at than you, or things that you don't care for, and you can afford it, do it. Do it because it comes across in the work otherwise.
Oh yeah, that that is so darn true. That one's definitely going to be written down because it's so darn true. It is so darn true. That's really the part of being your best self, and it's great that you had a client that was really really open. It's great that you were both open to. That's like you're open to receiving the advice, and the client was confident enough to be able to give that advice and actually ask permission first, as opposed to just blurting it out. And that like there's so many what pieces of wisdom out of that story, especially the fact that with folks having their BS detectors, or should I say BS antennas up at a high level today, people can
Mm-hmm.
tell if you're passionate about something or not. So true.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, I teach, continuous learning and market-based feedback as a key source for improvement. And this was my market, right? These are my customers offering to give me feedback on their interaction with me. It doesn't happen nearly as often as you would think, right? This is not something that every client is like, "Jeff, let me tell you how I felt about our engagement," right? Usually they just either, renew my contract or they don't, and that's a good indication, right? But this was a rare opportunity where a very thoughtful client decided to share her wisdom with me and her feedback, and I'm forever grateful to her. I learned so much from her and from that interaction, that at this point, she's moved on from that gig, and I will forever speak her praises. And if there's anything ever I can do to help her, she's always in. I'm there immediately.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Always got to love those folks. So, coming down to the question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the year of 2020 with all of your amassed knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oof, be good to be 25 again, I think.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, like, just to be clear, like, I'm 47, but yeah, I feel like I'm 25. Like, I feel great. I don't want to be like, "Oh my God, it sucks getting old." I feel good, like but it'd be good to be 25 again. I think to do it all over again. What would I tell my 25-year-old self? I would tell my 25-year-old self to start sooner. So I didn't start building my platform and creating this forever employability aspect of my life until I turned 35. Like at 35, I made an explicit decision to do it. But so I would start sooner. I'd say start now, because I would have built up my credibility and my platform much, much sooner. And that could have led to, interesting opportunities sooner or bigger opportunities later. I just would have started sooner. I think that to me is my biggest advice. And a lot of folks ask me that. I've been talking about this book a lot lately. People say, well, look, I am 25 and I am basically fresh out of school. I'm at my first job or my second job. And I don't have the expertise or the experience or the credentials to consider myself a thought leader. What should I do? And this is what I tell them, and what I would tell myself is just start telling your story. Right? Just get out there and start communicating your story. This, talk about the first 100 days at your new job. Talk about what it's like to look for a job in a pandemic. Tell whatever it is that you're going through, because no one has your story. No one, right? Even if there's like you're like, oh, I'm a marketing associate in a bank, and there's a million people in the world who are marketing associates in banks. True. But no one took the exact same set of steps to get there as you did. Tell your story. No one's having your experience exactly the same way. Tell your story. And that to me is the key thing I would tell anybody who's 25 and myself. Just start telling your story, because you're building a body of work around yourself that eventually will lead to that forever employability aspect of your career.
Ah, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Definitely gotta tell that story. Indeed, gotta tell that story. Because yeah, people enjoy hearing them. People enjoy hearing them. I mean, more than anything else, to be honest. Especially those funny ones too, and those stories where your life transformed for the better. Yes, indeed, for the better and not butter. That's right. Ah, yes, alliteration ahoy. Well, for those who want to keep in magical contact with you, what's the best way for folks to reach out to the one and only Jeff?
So look, I'm easily findable. That's by design. Best place to go to start, at least, is jeffgothelf.com. So just go to my website. Everything's there. You can learn about everything. You can find all my social network stuff. Please connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to see you on LinkedIn. But otherwise, yeah, jeffgothelf.com. Everything is there. You can follow me on Twitter from there. You can find my LinkedIn profile, sign up for my newsletter, read about the books, read some articles, watch some videos, see a funny picture of my dog, that kind of stuff.
Ah, woof. All right. Yep, I'm silly. Yep. Well, there you have it, folks. Reach out to Jeff, my friends. Reach out to Jeff. Pick up his books. Pick up his books, especially his newest one, Forever Employable. It's under 100 pages on Kindle and in audio form, folks. Got to pick it up, because you'll definitely, looks like one of those books you can finish in one sitting, and you definitely get some gems of knowledge out of there. And you'll have an infinite pencil of knowledge. That's right. That's right, indeed, not left. So, any parting words to the folks still listening, Jeff?
Yes. Yes. These are tough times these days, and a lot of different reasons for a lot of different ways. I think that folks who have been affected by all the things that are affecting folks at the moment, whether it be the political situation in the US, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's other things as well. One of the things that I found this time good for is focusing on your core value, not values, which is a really important thing, but a different thing. I'm talking about the core value, like boiling down the essence of what it is that you do. What problems do you help people solve? What are you particularly good at? And starting to examine other ways and other channels that you can use that value, that expertise that you have to deliver it, right? So if you've traditionally just kind of gone to the office and done it that way, is there a different way to do it? Can you take the skills that you've built up in the office and apply them in a different context? And so really all of those things are something to consider as we look to eventually emerge out of these crises and figure out what the new normal is across the spectrum of life. So that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I hope that helps a little bit.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things.